Welcome back to my channel. Bill Gates said, it's fine to celebrate successes, but it's more important to heed the lessons of failure. And Samuel Levinson said, you just learn from the mistakes of others. You can't possibly live long enough to make them all yourself. These two quotes signify that as leaders, we can learn from the successes and failures of others in order to learn valuable leadership lessons. In today's video, I'll discuss a few common rookie mistakes that new leaders make so that you'll know how to avoid them so that you can dodge those leadership traps. If you're interested, please like this video and keep watching. And welcome to the best place for new and emerging leaders who want help navigating challenging conversations in the workplace. Earl Nightingale was onto something when he said, you don't get in life what you want, you get in life what you are. It's only through hard work and dedication that we can avoid some of the common mistakes that new leaders often make. So as leaders, we want to be intentional about avoiding leadership mistakes that would put us at a disadvantage early on in our careers. And because you're watching this video, you'll have some additional insight on which common mistakes new leaders make and which one you want to steer clear of and be sure to avoid. In this episode, I'll review 5 common rookie mistakes that new leaders make so that you can avoid them and steer clear of those pitfalls. Before we move on, don't forget to subscribe and like this video. Now let's get into the tips. Tip number 1 of the common rookie mistakes that new leaders make is the lack of accountability. Ensuring that you hold yourself accountable sets a good example for those that you lead. And it also sets the standard for productivity and productive behavior for the entire team. There are 2 things that factor into the challenge for leaders who lack accountability. It's the fact that they not only fail to hold themselves accountable, they also fail to hold others who report to them accountable as well. This lack of accountability usually results in failing to accomplish company objectives or failing to hold staff accountable for not completing goals. Low accountability within a team can also cause team members to be quick to place blame instead of taking responsibility for the work and for the independently completing tasks. It's important for leaders to set a positive example that demonstrates personal integrity. A part of that is taking responsibility for actions. In her book called Dare to Lead, author and researcher Brené Brown breaks down an acronym that she calls Braving, B-R-A-V-I-N-G. She describes braving as one of the best ways to build a culture of trust. In the acronym, the letter A stands for accountability in leadership. She shares that leadership should always take personal accountability for actions and also for making mistakes. She also states that leaders should apologize if and when necessary. I believe that this goes a long way in showing that as leaders, we're not perfect and people can connect with that sort of admission of imperfection. They are willing to connect with a person who is willing to own and acknowledge their errors. Leaders who hold both themselves and others accountable have the ability to clearly articulate performance standards, execute strategy, and set clear priorities for the team. The negative effects of low accountability often leads to mistrust, low morale, and low employee engagement. To combat this, you want to set clear expectations and clearly define the key and core objectives. Leaders can also have clear and open conversations about what accountability looks like for the team and go a step further by assigning responsibility for tasks. That's also key to helping in this area. Tip number 2 of the common rookie mistakes that new leaders make is thinking that they're the best at everything. Leaders who think that they're the best at everything or that everything they do is right and or perfect don't allow room for themselves or for others to make mistakes. Making mistakes can be a useful and informative tool of learning what not to do and determining a better path forward. Leaders who don't admit when they make mistakes set a very bad example of leadership for a few different reasons. When people are afraid to make mistakes, they can't learn and they can't grow. John Bradshaw said, "It's okay to make mistakes. Mistakes are our teachers. They help us to learn." Leaders who think they're good at everything are also usually unteachable and unapproachable. This means that they don't take input or recommendations from others. Thinking that we know everything also closes us off from learning and growing. Author John Maxwell said, "If you want to grow, you need to get over any fear you may have of making mistakes." Another thing to keep in mind is that leaders who think that they know everything don't make room for others to share their abilities and talents. And this can result in a very selfish and/or self-centered worldview. It's important to allow others to share their gifts and talents because doing so sends a positive message that we all have something of value to offer, which is one of my personal philosophies about human beings. Tip number 3 of the common rookie mistakes that new leaders make is their actions don't match their words. Leaders who practice do as I say and not as I do set a poor example of effective leadership, but they also undermine their credibility with their teams. The second letter in the Braving acronym from Brown's book Dare to Lead is the letter R, which represents reliability. The author states that a leader's word should be reliable. This means that the team should have confidence that they can depend on the leader to speak in ways that are honorable. She goes on to explain that a leader should never overpromise. A leader should be aware of his or her limitations, and above all, leaders should always keep their word. These 3 factors are crucial because if employees view their leader as lacking integrity, they lose confidence in the leader's ability to lead, and this can translate to a loss of trust. Tip 4 of the common rookie mistakes that new leaders make is that they can't deal with conflict. A Forbes article published in 2012 called 5 Keys of Dealing with Workplace Conflict, contributor Mike Myatt wrote, "Don't fear conflict, embrace it. It's your job." He describes leadership and conflict as a full contact sport. The basic gist is that while conflict resolution makes leaders uncomfortable, we should build the conflict resolution skills that allow us to learn or lean into concerns instead of avoiding them. It's counterproductive to ignore conflict so that you don't have to deal with it. Leaders should opt instead to find ways to employ helpful conflict resolution strategies. In the article, the writer gives examples of the kinds of actions that can be demonstrated by employees to cause conflict in the workplace. The article outlines 2 major causes of conflict at work. The first is communication as a result of poor information, no information, or misinformation. And the second is letting emotions drive decisions. While the article outlines several difficult resolution strategies, there are 3 points that Myatt makes in the article about conflict resolution for leaders that stand out to me. The first tactic is to define acceptable behaviors. It put forth the idea that leaders should set clear, well-defined expectations for acceptable behavior as a way to avoid or prevent conflict. I would also add a consistent review of acceptable behavior standards and a code of conduct training exercises within teams would be a useful tactic as well. In my experience, this is a helpful way to reinforce acceptable workplace behavior policies and enhance employee awareness. If employees are aware of steps that they can take to resolve conflict at the peer-to-peer level, this can avoid escalation of conflict issues when they arise. When employees know what's expected of them by way of clearly, well-defined, and well-communicated codes of conduct requirement, this eliminates excuses and it also reduces the risk of misconduct due to the conduct violations. The second suggestion outlined in the article is for leaders to hit conflict head-on. This point stresses the fact that prevention is the key to managing conflict at work. I personally agree that proactive solutions are best when attempting to resolve challenging matters or conflicting matters. Avoidance behavior is the worst thing that leaders can do when it comes to resolving workplace concerns. I would also add to this that promoting self-awareness exercises and emotional intelligence training can go a long way in employees taking a proactive approach to heading off conflict before it occurs. When employees understand more about themselves and their other colleagues and some of the underlying currents that may arise due to the lack of self-awareness, much of the petty conflict may be avoided altogether. The third conflict resolution strategy mentioned in the Forbes article is to view conflict as an opportunity. I know it may sound strange to view conflict as something positive, but allow me to explain. This point centers around the fact that from conflict resolution, teachable moments can occur. It goes on to say that if we view conflict resolution as learning opportunities, there's room for tremendous growth. I agree with this point of view. In my opinion, it also lends itself to appreciating the differences in opposing points of view, and much of the workplace conflicts can be quickly resolved when we change our perspective and when we view things from someone else's point of view. Let's get into the next tip. Tip number 5 of the common rookie mistakes that new leaders make is that they're afraid to lead. It's easy to lead when things are good and going well, but it's an altogether different matter when we're faced with adversity. Let's take a look at a few trailblazers who overcame adversity in order to lead in extraordinary ways. Famous basketball player Michael Jordan was cut from his varsity basketball team in his sophomore year. Instead of giving up, he practiced and persevered, and through his will and determination, he's now considered one of the best to ever play the game. Former U.S. President Franklin D. Roosevelt was paralyzed from the waist down by polio before running for office. Not only was he a great orator, but he was admired by many and is regarded as one of the greatest leaders of his time. Another person that we can look at is Oprah Winfrey, who faced many challenges in her early life. She was born into poverty and she endured sexual abuse at an early age. She worked to overcome those hardships, and she rose to worldwide acclaim and influence via her television talk show and her philanthropy. Leaders are called to be courageous and bold despite the difficulties and the challenges that may arise. This doesn't mean that leaders don't experience disappointment or fear. Great leaders just find ways to push past the fear and turn adversity into learning opportunities that turn into triumphs. In her book entitled Feel the Fear and Do It Anyway, Susan Jeffers reviews the underlying causes of fear. She says that to diminish fear, you have to develop trust in your own capabilities. Avoiding leadership challenges is not the way to overcome adversity or fear. It's important to tap into your inner power and leverage your strengths as we improve upon areas for growth. So the key is to feel the fear and be courageous enough to lean into it anyway. Motivational speaker Les Brown says, "You can learn all the techniques in the world, but if you don't believe in yourself, it will never happen for you." He also said that you should learn to activate the thinker in you. Don't allow your emotions to control you. Effective leaders are self-aware and self-controlled. They work to develop themselves and gain mastery, and they execute and follow through on their plans of action in order to be successful. Tap into your abilities and talents to lead as you were meant to lead. Leo Tolstoy said that everyone thinks of changing the world, but no one thinks of changing himself. Only when we focus on self-improvement and personal development can we hope to avoid some of the most common leadership pitfalls. Now, if you're watching this video and you want to see more videos like this, let me know in the comments below. If there's a specific leadership topic that you want me to make a video about, let me know that too, and I'll be sure to do so. In the meantime, don't forget to share this video with a friend or with a colleague who could use some of these tips. And be sure to click the notification bell so that you'll be notified when I release my next video. As always, have a great week, be kind to yourself, and I'll see you in the next one. Thanks so much for watching.